And the reason they didn't adapt is because organizations are not like machines, they're like organisms. They are living entities made up of people with feelings, motivations, roles, aspirations, passions, and ambitions. And if the organism doesn't respond, just as in the natural world, if it doesn't respond to changes in its environment, it dies. And it's what's happened to many companies, including most recently Kodak. So adaptability. But the top priority these CEOs pointed to for their company's long-term flourishing was creativity. They said, we need companies that are consistently and systematically creative. And how do you do that? You know, we need people who can think differently, but we can't, this is the great irony, we can't always find them because kids coming out of universities and colleges these days find it very difficult to come up with fresh ideas. And why? They've been educated on this standard routine of routine testing, you know, of multiple choice tests. The fourth purpose of education, though, is the ultimate one to be, which is personal. Because in the end, education is personal. It's about people. It's not about components and machines. It's people who are being educated. And if we know anything about people, it's they are different. They're driven by different talents, different abilities, different passions, different interests, and different motivations. One of the kind of signature features of humanity is diversity. Of course, it contrasts sharply with one of the organizational principles of education, which is conformity. And an education which isn't nuanced to individual differences soon finds that very many people are disengaged from it or alienated by it. And that's been the evidence in America, for example. About 30% of kids don't complete high school. My point is that children have a vast appetite for learning. And it only starts to dissipate when we educate them. That's to say, when we put them in buildings designed for the purpose and put them in serried ranks and start to force-feed them information in which they may or may not have an interest. Now, the conceit of education is that, you know, children learn anyway. The conceit of education is that we can help them do it better and direct them to things they may not otherwise learn if left to their own devices. That's why we plan to do this sort of stuff. But learning will happen anyway, and with the new technologies happening more and more, actually, spontaneously. What it means is, if we really want education to be effective, we have to focus on the process of teaching and learning. And teaching, I think, over the course of the past number of years, of these so-called reform movements, has become reduced in the political discourse to a kind of delivery system. You know, your job is to deliver the national curriculum. I don't know when we borrowed all this lexicon from FedEx. I don't know when that began to happen, that we dropped the curriculum off for you. But teaching has become seen as a kind of delivery system, and teachers have become seen as kind of functionaries in the raising of standards and the administration of tests. Actually, teaching is an art form. Everything I've ever learned and seen about teaching convinces me that is the case. It's not enough to be a good teacher to know your stuff, though you need to know it. You don't need to know everything, but you need to know enough to be able to teach it. I mean, but more than that, you need to be able to excite people about the material. You need to engage them. You need to pique their imaginations. You need to fuel their creativity. You need to drive their passion for it. You need to get them to want to learn this. You need to find points of entry. That's the gift of a great teacher. Somebody was saying to me earlier today, you know, how can you do that with 35 kids in the class? I know teachers, and my wife Terry was among them when I first met her, with 42 kids in the class, and the place was humming and alive with activity and learning. And you do that not by you having to teach them everything, but by getting them actively involved in teaching themselves and teaching each other. In Harvard now, they talk a lot about the flipped classroom. The physics professors there who have stopped lecturing people, which is ironic for me to be reporting on now, I know that, but instead he gets the students in groups to work together and teach each other. And I find it very interesting that finally, you know, Harvard and our universities have discovered what every good primary school teacher has known for years, you know, that people teach themselves if you create the right conditions for it. So one of the ways that we improve education is by recognizing that it happens at the point of where teachers and learners meet. If it doesn't happen there, it doesn't happen at all in formal, organized education systems. So you can't improve education by ignoring that relationship or demeaning it or vilifying it. But it also means if you are in that relationship, you hold the tools of power right in your hands. You can change this system yourself. You don't need to wait for anybody to do it. Now, the shift, I think, is this. I said that we have mechanistic metaphors of education. We do, for the most part. We have systems of education, too. But it's not a mechanistic system. And this, I think, is one of our points of entry into the future. That a school, just like a child or a teacher, is not a component. They are living organisms, living, breathing entities. A school is a community of reciprocating individuals who develop their own culture, their own way of seeing things, their own habits and rituals and so on. You can define culture in different ways. One is, a more formal way to say it is, it's the values and forms of behavior that characterize different social groups. In American corporate speak, they often say culture is the way we do things around here. But it's like that. And I said at the end of my last talk, it's about habits and habitats. It's about the rhythms of behavior and the physical space that people occupy. All schools are different, all communities are unique, and they're all living organisms, all of them. And it's why I think we should recognize that education is not mechanistic. It's better to adapt metaphors from agriculture or ecology or from the real role of leaders when it comes to education, whether you're a teacher or a head teacher or you're the head of a district or you're the Secretary of State for Education. Your proper role, if you have a loving relationship with education, is not to try and command and control it, but to recognize your place in climate control. And if you can help to change the climate of expectation in education, if you can change what's happening at the ground, then you've changed the world. Thank you.